You're listening to Crashes, Claims, and Clarity, hosted by Daryl Burrow, a Georgia-based personal injury attorney with over 30 years of experience and founder of Burrow and Associates. With a background in both legal strategy and compassionate client care, Daryl has helped over 10,000 individuals and families navigate life after injury. Guided by his Christian faith and a deep sense of justice, he brings expert insight, personal stories, and powerful interviews to every episode. If you're looking for truth, support, and clarity in the aftermath of an accident, this is your place. This is Crashes, Claims, and Clarity.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Crashes, Claims, and Clarity. I am your host, Daryl Burrow. I'm an attorney here in the state of Georgia. Our home office is located in Duluth, although we can serve every single county in our state. Today, I have a great pleasure of being joined by Anna Bielman. Anna is a professional counselor with Key Counseling here in Atlanta, and she specializes in trauma and trauma-informed care for people who have been in automobile accidents, workplace injuries, or suffered some other kind of injury that has completely turned their world upside down. She helps people understand how it's going to affect their overall recovery and helps them get through all of that. We appreciate you joining us today, Anna.
Hey, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, no, it's great. Very excited to learn about this topic that maybe isn't discussed very much or isn't dealt with very much. And so we want to bring that to light, educate people, educate myself, and hopefully
Sure.
we can help some more people that are dealing with this. So, Anna, first tell us, how did you get your start?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am originally from Augusta, Georgia, so not originally from the Atlanta area. Grew up here and then moved to the metro Atlanta area for graduate school, where I got my degree in counseling at Richmont Graduate University there in Smyrna, Georgia. And then ended up coming back home to Augusta, Georgia, work telehealth now with Key Counseling, and I am married and have a little one.
Oh, great, great. That's fantastic. Um, well, let's dive right in. Sort of after an injury, be it however it occurred, what are some of the most common trauma responses?
Absolutely. Some of the first responses I tend to see are things like trouble sleeping, irritability, maybe some brain fog, have a hard time remembering exactly, not necessarily what happened, but more day-to-day things. Maybe have a hard time remembering that checklist at work, um, and then vividly remembering what happened during the traumatic event. So tend to see a lot of emotional response there, whether it be anxiety, could be panic, it could be completely shutting down, but some
Hmm,
type of emotional response to that event are some of the earliest things that I usually see.
okay. And what is it that happens that causes that, on edge or causes, I guess, a lot of those things or all of those things? What causes people to be on edge or uptight that can last for, a long period of time?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great question because when these things happen, different people are going to respond differently. So, take a car accident, for example, one person might go through that and be completely fine. And somebody else might go through that and have this on edge, emotional injury that's happening in addition to whatever physical injuries may have happened. So, what we're looking at is not just what happened, but how did it affect that person? So, someone that is affected by that is going to have perceived there to be a threat, whether it be life injuring. The nervous system feels some type of lack of safety. And so, because of that lack of safety internally, they may physically be safe, no longer in the accident, no longer at the place where the injury happened, but their nervous system doesn't recognize that yet. So
Hmm.
there's this on edge, kind of the nervous system looking for that next thing that's going to happen to try to be prepared. So it's trying to protect us, but ends up being hurtful in the long run.
Okay. And then how is that hurtful? Or I guess that's the effect. How does it affect family members, co-workers, other church members, or
Mhm.
people they come in contact with?
Sure. So one of the most common ways I think it affects other people is maybe a lack of understanding. So because two people respond so differently to the exact same thing, someone might say, "Well, why aren't you just, over that yet? Why is that still bothering you? What is going on?" Because maybe their nervous system wouldn't respond the same way, or they haven't gone through something similar. And they have the absolute best intention. Support that person, love that person, just may not understand what's happening. And when we don't understand something as humans, we want to make some sense of it. And if we can't, we tend to dismiss it. So, okay, I don't understand why this is happening to you, why you're now anxious or on edge. So let's try to move past this. You're fine.
So the family members, co-workers, they might not be as maybe they're patient in the beginning, but that's going to wear off at some point as well.
Sure. Yeah. Or on the opposite side, a helplessness feeling.
Uh,
It's awful to see someone you know, love, care about go through something and not know how to help. So offering resources to the families can be really helpful too. Of just listening to this person can be so powerful in
Yeah.
helping them, even if you don't know what to do beyond that. Just them knowing they're not alone is incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. We all need to remember to do that.
Sure.
I guess even when people haven't been through trauma. You mentioned that some people react differently for a family member or a coworker, or let's take me. I'm an attorney. I'm representing someone that's been involved in an automobile wreck. They
Hmm.
have physical injuries that we know about. What of those signs should we be looking for that tells us, yes, this is a person that I may need to make or a family member needs to make a recommendation versus the person that you said would respond that's perfectly fine? Where is that
Hmm.
line? Is it a bright line, or how do we make that determination?
Yeah, absolutely. And since it does look different for everyone, it can be a little bit harder, but there are some clear signs. So, we're looking at, is this stress? Is this from a clinical perspective? We're looking at, is this acute stress disorder? Are we trending towards post-traumatic stress? And some of those signs are going to be, is this fading or is this getting worse? So with stress, our bodies have a stress response. And then once we're out of that stressful situation, it might linger for a little bit, but we're able to move to the next activity. Your mind, your body aren't stuck in what happened anymore. So, maybe it's as benign or becomes as benign as just your typical daily routine. Whereas if that's not happening, it's not a stress response. We're trending more towards emotional injury. You're going to see things
Okay.
more like avoidance. So it might be avoidance of a person, it could be avoidance of the place where it happened. For driving, it might be maybe they don't want to drive, or maybe they feel really anxious if they do drive. Or if they're thinking about going to work, that brings up an emotional response in them. So we're looking for those emotional signs that are going to be beyond stress. And typically, those are going to start impacting functioning at some point, whether it be functioning at work, functioning in a relationship, driving. That's a big skill that you need day to day, typically, um, unless you have access to public transportation or things like that. But if there was driving before, the expectation would be that they return to driving. And if that's not happening, that's going to be a big sign that, okay, something is stuck in the nervous system here and maybe need to make a recommendation. And I would say for family
Okay.
members too, you know that person well. Maybe a church member, maybe you've gotten to know this person. And so maybe they're acting off, whatever that looks like for them. Maybe they're typically a calm person and they're really not anymore,
Mm.
or a little bit more irritable. So I would say if you know that person well and they just aren't acting like themselves, trust your instinct and suggest they get some help.
Okay. You mentioned some injuries happen at work, some are maybe automobile wrecks. What,
Mhm.
if any, differences are there between those two when it has to do with mental health and you're trying to help people heal?
Sure. So I think some major differences there are going to be with a job versus an accident. If something happens at your job and now your avoidance is related to your place of work, that's going to lead to a
Mm,
different set of stressors
okay.
than an accident. So if there's the avoidance of going to work, you could have financial stress or maybe some identity loss. I really loved my job and working before, and now I don't.
Hmm.
Could be fear of job security. I'm having a hard time performing, whether that be physically going to work or when I'm there, having a hard time doing the tasks I need to do. Probably going to lead to some fear. Could even be now the nervous system perceives work as being an unsafe environment. And maybe that threat has gone away, physically healed, but internally still feel this sense of lack of safety because the nervous system hasn't returned to baseline of not being activated anymore. So all of that is going to be different than a car accident. That's going to be more unpredictable, loss of control. Um, so the nervous system might respond in a similar way, and there's a lot of overlap, um, but a
Okay.
separate group of issues when it happens at work.
Okay. So next big logical question, what happens if these things are ignored long term, no matter how the injury occurred?
Sure. So long term, they are typically going to get worse. So, a common phrase is time heals and, over time things will get better. But in the therapy trauma world, we really see it's what you do with that time that is going to help or not help a situation get better. So, long term, if we're not getting help, the nervous system is going to stay in that fight or flight space and isn't going to return to baseline. So, going to continue to have a hard time getting sleep or continue to feel anxious and panicked and just isn't going to calm like it would have before, which long term can be very disruptive to someone's life, especially relationally. Maybe this happened at work and now I'm on edge constantly. That's going to carry over into your personal life.
All right. Right. So let's suppose that I, as an attorney or a family member, we have identified this and we've tried to make a referral,
Hmm.
um, but we don't seem to be having success with the individual or the family member or the coworker.
Sure.
I mean, how do we make inroads for them to finally, um, whatever it is, whatever their roadblocks are, how do we make inroads to getting them to punch through that and actually getting the help they need?
Sure, yeah. And that is so hard because when you see someone, you've identified the problem and you want to be of help, ultimately it's up to them if they decide to seek that help out or not for themselves. I would say listening, giving understanding can be helpful. Maybe seeing what some of those roadblocks are. Maybe it's finances, maybe it's, fear, what are people going to think? Maybe it's knowing, hey, this is confidential. This doesn't need to go anywhere else. Other people don't need to know what you talk about if you choose to go to therapy. But maybe getting a sense of what's stopping you from getting help. And if it's that they're not ready or don't quite see that they need that, for family members, maybe more so, just continuing to be there for them until maybe they are ready to go and
Hmm.
seek some further help.
What about age differences? I mean, sometimes I've had
Mhm.
minor children, even younger than driving age. We're talking about,
Sure.
13, 14 years old. They're a passenger in an automobile. Is
Mm,
there, what are the differences, I guess, when someone that age versus someone who's, an adult?
sure. Differences in the response that they might have to that accident
Yeah,
is what you're
yeah.
asking? Yeah. Yeah, sure. So the adult brain, at least cognitively, is going to understand what happened maybe a little bit better. But if you're talking about a minor, their brains aren't even fully developed yet. So their reprocessing what happened is going to look different, more than likely, than an adult after. So maybe, trauma is about perceived injury or life-threatening events. Whether they are or not, the nervous system has perceived this is a tremendous threat to my well-being. And so that might seem like more of a threat to a younger nervous system than an adult, potentially.
Yeah, and I could, let's suppose that child's not physically injured, but they've been through the trauma of seeing one of their parents
Hmm.
maybe seriously injured, or maybe almost
Yes.
lost that parent, or did lose that parent.
Oh, yeah, that's extremely traumatic, whether it happened to you or you watched someone go through that, because that's going to impact their life as well. It might not be personally in the sense that they were hurt, but they saw this caregiver, this person they care about, hurt, injured, maybe even lost that person. Um, that's definitely, then you're talking about multiple things, right? You're talking about trauma, you're talking about loss, grief. There's a lot that's going to be in there for them to deal with depending on the situation and what the outcome ended up being. So extremely important too that they have support.
Okay.
It can be harder to open up sometimes for the minor folks because maybe don't have the language for it yet, especially if they're younger. That's going to be more play type therapy when
Okay.
they do go to counseling because they might not have the words depending on their age to share. I was scared or I feel lost now that my world has changed. It might be more drawing a picture, and that's how they can express what happened to them. So there are different approaches therapy wise to help them make sense of what happened.
Okay. Do you see that there's sort of a consistent time frame on you being able to help people return that nervous system response to something that's more normal?
Sure. So it greatly varies. It depends on the person. It depends on what happened. So is this a single incident? Has this happened before? Um, are there other traumas that have happened? So let's say I have an adult who had a relatively healthy childhood growing up, had an accident happen. We can work on just that accident and restoring the nervous system to baseline. If there's a history of maybe accidents, maybe other types of trauma, it's going to be a lengthier process
Mm, okay.
to help that person truly feel safe because things have compounded over their life. And not always, but typically with the younger clients, it goes much faster because of that. They don't have as much life, as much things that have happened to them. And so typically for kids, it's going to move a lot quicker than with an adult.
Okay. Yeah. Good to know, and a lot of insight for us as personal injury lawyers to be on the lookout for. I really do appreciate that.
Sure.
So tell me about key counseling. Who you're a part of, and I think you mentioned to me earlier, been a part of since you finished college.
Yes, yes, I have been. So our practice owner is Michelle Hessian, and she has grown the practice since I've been there over the last 5 years, and um, have a whole team of clinicians now. So we treat the entire lifespan. Different therapists have different areas that they specialize in, different ages. There are several of us that specialize in trauma. And so, yeah, I've been there since I completed under or my graduate program. And I see a lot of trauma, like you said. And We all have our own approaches that we're trained in therapy. So, one approach that I'm trained in that I use specifically with what we've been talking about is EMDR. And so it's eye movements. And so the idea there is that we can treat trauma as a whole. So when we're talking, you and I, there are only a couple parts of our brain that are lit up and that are online. But when we're doing this eye movement therapy, the client is actually watching the dots go back and forth. So their eyes are going all the way to the left and then all the way to the right. And what research has found is that when that's happening, all areas of the brain are lit up and are online. So that's
Hmm.
helping them process not just what they're thinking, but what they're feeling, the emotional responses that happened. And so that gives us an inroad to help them see progress and to gain some tools also to learn how to manage those emotional responses as they come up. But that has been so powerful for me as a tool in my practice, especially with things like accidents. People can see a lot of progress relatively quickly using
Wow,
that therapy.
that's fantastic. Tell me about locations. I know you do a lot of virtual counseling, but what about office locations?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am all virtual. We do
Okay.
have many locations now at this point. So we have grown quite a bit. We are now in the Virginia Highlands area. We have an office in Roswell. Um, and a couple other offices that have come online as well. So service a lot of the Atlanta area, and if we aren't close by, can definitely do telehealth as well.
Oh, that's great. Tell us how we can find you or find the practice as a whole.
Sure. Yeah. So the practice as a whole is going to be keycounselingatl.com. So that's going to be the quickest way to find us. All of our therapists are listed on there, all of our email addresses based on who would be a good fit.
Yeah, it's great. Appreciate you joining us today. It's wonderful to have this insight, gain some knowledge on signs that we can look out for as personal injury attorneys, but also for anybody that watches this that may have had a family member that's going through some sort of trauma, and actually giving them some a road, a path on what they actually need to do. So appreciate you joining us, Anna. It's been great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Crashes, Claims, and Clarity with attorney Daryl Burrow, founder of Burrow and Associates and a trusted advocate for over 30 years. If today's episode helped bring clarity or hope after an accident, be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a review. To connect with Daryl or learn more, visit legalatlanta.com. Join us next week for another honest, faith-centered conversation about recovery, rights, and moving forward after injury.